You are listening to the Eulogy Podcast by none other than me, Diane Riney.
The Eulogy Podcast by Diane Riney is brought to you by the Naked Truth Agency, one of the leading social causes and diversity agencies specializing in PR, influencers, talent and production. www.nakedtruth.agency.
So hi everyone, this is my second audition of the Eulogy Podcast and I have got some amazing guests today and they are the Imafidon brothers. Now for those of you who don't know who they are, check them out. They are phenomenal and yes, I'll have to let them know this. We don't want them to get too big a heads, but I actually have so much pride when I speak about them. So first up, we have the older brother, Kenny Imafidon. Hi, Kenny. And we also have the wonderful George Imafidon. Hello, George. So what's this podcast about and this episode? I often have a burning question I'm constantly asking some of the younger mentees I have. And it's all around mentoring, being a role model, which I think it's all about sending the lift back down. And you guys come from a place which, if it was up to the media, you wouldn't have succeeded. And you guys have both smashed the glass ceiling in some respects. And I want to know how important along that journey for both of you was having key role models in your life. Kenny, go on.
Yeah, that's cool. No, so for me, they're definitely pivotal to my success and in enabling me to smash the glass ceiling and also helping me to see further than I could before. And for me, that's why I really value like having mentors and role models. But obviously role models is one thing. That's just for you to believe that it's possible if you just because you can see it. However, the mentors for me, even people like yourself, have been critical in terms of like shaping me, shaping my thinking. And it's also about the exposure as well and the ability to have somebody that helps you to navigate through life and also accelerate, right? I think for me, like it's easy to kind of look at my journey and people are like, oh, how did you do that? And it seems like you've done that so quick, but that's because I'm around a lot of older people who have seen life, have been through those challenges. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun a lot of time in terms of challenges, right? And for me, working with, it's like one of the proverbs which I really love, and it, for me, signifies why mentorship is so important. The proverb goes, what a wise man can see sitting on a stool, you know what I mean, a younger person couldn't see climbing a tree.
Oh, I like that. That's a really good one.
And so that for me just signifies just how valuable they are. And it's like, if I talk to anyone who hasn't got a mentor, I can reassure you they're never going to get to where they're meant to get to. Like you need people along the way to help you on your journey. That's a fact. Obviously, it's about getting the right mentors and all that, but that's a whole different question. But they're very important.
George, for you?
I have a proverb, but one that I definitely knew from early. It was kind of the African proverb of it takes a village to raise a child. And that from that point on, from as soon as I heard it, it made a lot of sense because I knew it was going to take a community, not any one individual, not one mentor, but several different people that I could, go under their wing and really learn how things work, and then get to the tables and not just be on the menu, as Kenny likes to say it. So I guess Kenny was definitely by default one of my kind of role models. So all the good and the bad, I initially kind of saw through him and his experiences. And then I had my engineering teacher who really helped me hone my skill set of fixing bikes and learning how that can, go into problem solving and engineering. And then having a community more than anything else with the Amos bursary. Yeah, and that just showed me, it normalized success for me on my journey, and just, yeah, allowed me to see much beyond what I saw growing up in Peckham. I could see so many different people that were setting up businesses, that were studying hard in order to get to places that they wanted to get to. And if I tried to do that journey alone, I wouldn't have been exposed to any of these experiences that I now have. So I think one thing that it definitely done, and the key word I would say is exposure. It gave me that exposure much before I could have ever imagined I needed it. And that just allowed me to accelerate and meet my potential, which I still think I haven't cracked yet. And we're on that journey. So yeah.
But do you think it's interesting what you say, because but if you was to go back to maybe 13, 14, 15, did you think mentors were important then? Is it something you've always thought?
Definitely. I guess growing up in Peckham, we had, in other words, they have elders, right? You have people, there's always, been a hierarchy. You have different people that you've looked up to from that point. And those are people that you like their lifestyle, you like what they had, and you admire to be in similar positions. And that gave you the hunger and tenacity to say, okay, cool, I'm going to try and make it out of, the hood or Peckham, whatever it may be, and be, where they are. And I always knew mentors could help me get to the next level. I just didn't necessarily know how to get the positive ones. So I think that was it. But mentors personally have helped me secure all of my scholarships, my internships, and showed me how to play the game. And I knew they would be able to do that from a very young age. I just didn't know where to find them. So it was probably when I joined the Amos bursary, which Kenny, I guess, supported me and showed me how to, told me about the opportunity. That's how I knew, I could get these mentors that were positive in the community as well.
Kenny, for you, was it something that you always thought was important when you was the younger Kenny? I can say that now. God, this is so bad.
That's so funny. I'm still young. So to be honest, it's interesting. I think for George, you obviously have a different perspective. However, for me, it's way more. Obviously, there's always going to be people who you're impressed by, right, and who you admire, and who you think, oh my days, they've done this, and I could do that. Now, similar to what Joe said, a lot of people who I saw do that were, I would say, they lived way more negative lifestyles than anything. So they may not be seen as aspirational in society's perspective, but to me, in terms of the success they've acquired and what you could see material gain, they were successful, right? And so I always knew that could have been something I could have done. However, you don't really see enough of the other side. You do see it, but not that look like us, right? It's not really black people. You know they exist. However, at the same time, a lot of time you saw a lot of our people, you never, forgetting about a lot of our people, you just don't even know how much jobs, how much industries, how big the whole workforce is in terms of employment. Like, there's so much things you just really don't know. So even before you even get into the conversation of seeing people look like you're not even aware of how much opportunities are there, right? You just know about the doctor and the GP. You don't know there's a chiropractor, there's a gynecologist. You're not 13 knowing that you could be specializing in all these things. And so it's just, I think for me, my whole worldview was extremely limited. So at 13, was I sitting there thinking, I want mentors? Definitely not. Because it's like, I was very much a nuisance when I was younger anyway. So it's not, I was definitely not 13 thinking.
You was a nuisance, Kenny. God. You guys, I tell you, he's a sweetie pie, really, isn't it, Kenny? So who was one of your first mentors? Kenny, for you, who was the first person who you would say, got that title as mentor?
So if I look back and reflect, I'll say that one of my mentors growing up was definitely like, someone who's my neighbor, 100%. I would say that looking back, because that's someone who I looked up to and someone who showed me love from early, as in like, highly regarded me. And despite whatever life choices he made, he very much pushed me, and I would say George as well, to not take certain other choices. For example, like me and George, like we never grew up, we didn't smoke. We didn't, like, even though people around us smoke, but I know it can even sound as small as that, but like we just never did that, even though we were around so much people where that
Who
was the
smoked?
lifestyle. Yeah, and it just seems, and even things like getting good grades in school, like those are the kind of things which they were happy to hear. That's the kind of news they wanted to hear. When I think about it now, that's what really made me feel so comfortable, wanting to think that actually being smart and being XYZ is actually important. So as much as I may have been causing trouble, I also had people who were very much pushing me to say, actually, you need to do this stuff and do it properly. And actually, despite their own choices they made, and even if a lot of people may not agree with those choices, they were actually very positive influences in my life. So I would say that is like the first. If I talk about like professionally, and it would be Jonathan Toy, also who I met when I was 16, 17. Yeah.
For you, George?
So the first, mentor, I would say, exactly the same as Ken, for the same reasons. So I would focus more on the professional. From the professional aspect, I had 2 mentors at once. So the Amos Bursary gave us 2 mentors, a prayer and professional mentor, one that was closer in age and another one that was, in industry. And so I classed them both as my mentors at that very point. So I guess it's difficult to distinguish. So I kind of got 2 straight away.
You're just greedy. You're just greedy. You're just greedy, isn't it? It's okay.
Basically.
You can be greedy.
But it was a huge boost, because it meant that I had someone that could help me with my day-to-day life. So, I had applications to do. I had, I wanted to get to university. I had, cover letters to do. I had a personal statement that needed to be completed, and I needed people to show me how to do this. And my peer mentor could do that. And then I needed to be exposed to the world. I needed to understand, how do you eat, these 5-course meals and so forth. And my professional mentors helped me, kind of do that and understand how to navigate those spaces. So, I would say that would be the second one. That would be Tyrone Edward, as a professional mentor, and the peer mentor, Richard Butler.
There's different types of mentors, but what about mentors who were more like life mentors, who teach you about just how to navigate, how to navigate life? Who would you say was that your next mentor in that space?
For me, my first mentor was Atia Sheikh. And she kind of walked me through this whole process of everything, just life, all different areas, not just professional. And she showed me how to play the game, I guess. That was what she taught me. And I've had, different people come later on, but until today, since 2014, she's been guiding me on the process. Anytime I have big decisions to make or tough decisions, she's the first person that comes to mind, regardless of whatever aspect it is. I know what she specializes in, but yeah, she's definitely been a mentor and a coach. Okay, I think there is a difference, and she's.
And what would you say is the difference is? What would you say the difference is between a mentor and a coach?
So mentor, I often see is both of them could be long term, for sure, but a coach is often for a defined objective. So you're trying to win a championship, you're trying to get a particular job, or you're trying to get a promotion, wherever it may be. So they're there to take your confidence from wherever it is now to a certain level and then maybe someone else has to help you along the way. Whereas a mentor, a bit more holistic and can help with everything for a much longer time. So I would say that would be the main difference. One is more indefinite, than the other, but equally effective.
Yourself, Kenny?
So for me, I would say, when we talk about life, I would say obviously, like, even when I mentioned Jonathan Toy before, I feel he was very influential, particularly at the time when I met him, right? I was very much at a crossroads in my life, and this is someone who actually wasn't from our community in that way. So this is a white man who was actually, for me, very much open arms, really believed in me. I was extremely supportive, right? And so through him, I met Viv, who you know, and for me, that's kind of where I was able to then meet other people like yourself and Gwen, and who I've been able to stick with on the journey. So I would say for me that, but I agree with your point in terms of even when I did meet Viv and come across him, even just the exposure in relation to like books, the exposure in terms of having conversations around being Black identities. Even like one of the first books I read when he first mentioned me was Black Skin, White Mask. And that's actually for me a
it's
very
a wicked book,
important, and it's something which even George knows, that the Amos bursary, I make sure that I encourage everybody to read it, right? But this is what I mean about the exposure. And we start looking at life, we start looking at identity and everything else. And similar to what George said, is you can have life mentors for a season as well as coaches, I think. And so for me, it's just about knowing what life stage you're in and where people can continue to add that value. But I've always seen mentor relationships as you should always do your best for it to be reciprocal. But at the same time, it's not for you also as a mentee to feel the burden to reciprocate, because a lot of times you also have to learn to take in when people just want to pour out their kindness to you as well. Say like even in our case, like there's only so much I could do for you outside of be myself, remain loyal. It's like I'm not gonna shower you with gifts. There's a lot of things you can do yourself, and it's just yeah.
What I think a lot of people get wrong, I think a mentoring relationship is a two-way thing, and I've always said I learn from you guys as much as hopefully you learn from me, but I do think it's a two-way process. And I also think a lot of times when I've seen mentoring relationships break down, from my perspective, it's that often the mentee is not teachable. And I think when you're not teachable, there's a problem, you know, and people might think that sounds really harsh. Well, my mum used to say, if you're not teachable, you're already dead, you know, because we're always learning. And I hope I will learn from somebody. They could be older, younger, whatever, to the day I die, because that's part of the life cycle, in my opinion. But I do find some, not all of the younger generation, they know it all. I've never known people to just know it all, you know, and I'm like, there's going to be a problem, because you have to be teachable. You have to be teachable.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And for me, I feel like that has been my strongest asset in terms of just on my journey of mentors, being teachable and being responsive. And also I've been blessed, like I said, to have mentors who are also very clear that this is advice. So it's not like you're telling me to do this and I must do this. It's you also appreciate your own humility that this is just your perspective. It's even like with our relationship, right? There's been times even in a professional capacity where we could talk about particular opportunities. You have your perspective. And for me, the way you share it, it's not like, okay, this is what we are deciding. The choice is still yours. And similar to what George says, that you're given the wisdom that you need and the expertise, but it's your choice to make. And for me, those relationships are always like you learn the most from them and you grow the most from them as well, right? And also I think one of the things about being young, which I've really come to, I look back now and I've learned, is that really learning to, for me, myself, also to be humble enough to also appreciate when someone they actually know what they're talking about. So there's times where even when you think you know something, you should actually really trust that this person actually knows they're talking about. And for this decision, I'm going to put what Diana said above even what I'm thinking right now. Now, for some people, that might seem like, oh my days, you ain't got your own mind. But that's not the point here. The point is actually, like I said, you have seen how much stuff before I got into this scenario. So, and even that itself, it takes a whole nother level of humility to also to appreciate that this person really knows what they're talking about.
For you, George?
I couldn't agree more. Being a sponge is kind of what I call it. That has been an asset, a huge asset for me. I don't know if I did it intentionally. I just knew I wanted to learn as much as I could. Maybe my faith has kind of played a part in that as well, because I knew I needed the teachable spirit. Because when I was hard-headed, no change was happening. You know, like nothing was going on. So it was about how can I get wisdom and get as much insight as possible. And I knew in order to do that, I have to be teachable. I need to like really clothe myself with humility, you know what I mean? So that was what it was for me, just realizing that I don't know everything. And whenever you think you know everything, that's the point that you're going to stop growing. So because I believe I know so little, it gives me so much room for growth. I feel I
Yeah.
know so much little about the world.
Mm.
So it's been a guiding force to stay curious, to keep that childlike nature, to just continue listening. I now have like a personal board of advisors or mentors, or just
Oh,
groups
look
of
at
people,
you. Check
groups of
you
people,
out.
um, and you just join communities of, you know, people in, you know, the areas that I care about: tech, social impact, education, boards, you know, that Kenny has kind of always been speaking about, you know, and creating communities if those communities don't exist, so that I can learn and not be the smartest person in the room. Because it's very easy to get to that point.
Mm.
So you always have to be expanding the room and going into new rooms. Now I'm in a lot of the rooms I don't feel like I know everything, and that's amazing. So I speak last, and I'm just listening and learning so much that I can bring back to my community, my team, and kind of
Mm.
help us grow. So yeah, it would, and the reason why I do it is because I would hate to fail because of a lack of knowledge that was right in front of me, and I just didn't, you know, just open my ears to listen. So yeah, I'm very much keen on listening now and taking everything in and not being hard-headed anymore like I
Because
was.
listening is such a big skill, though. It really is. And I don't think people appreciate how big a skill it really is. And I always say sometimes it's the quiet person just taking it all in who's the person who goes on to greatness, really. It's the listening. And funny enough, I just did an article talking about even mental health and how
Mm,
to um, deal with this pandemic with your children. And I was just saying, the funny thing is that it's something that you can do very easily, and is listen without judgment. Just listen, be totally open to what that person has to say, and whether it's a child or not. And someone says, oh God, I find listening so difficult. I said, yeah, because that's about you putting your own importance first. Because if you're not wanting to listen to somebody, that's because what you've got to say is more important, which I think is the wrong way around.
One thing I would say that helped me a lot was taking notes. It seems so small, but every single session, every single time, we're all forgetful in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many things going on in our head. So just taking notes as a mentee, being a sponge doesn't mean just, you know, letting it come into your head. Sometimes you don't understand what they're saying in the time, and you might not have all the time to express it. So just taking notes in the process has kind of been super effective to me, because I can come back in the next session, know what we spoke about, and ask for clarification, and it just helps you be a better listener, kind of as you were saying. So yeah.
Mm. And it's beautiful to hear two Black men speaking eloquently, um, reflectively. But how did that all come about? Because you both of you are that way. So I've met your mum, so I'm just thinking it must be something to do with your upbringing. Because let's be honest, when you come from what they would call deprived areas, even though Kenny and I always have this joke about Peckham, it's not deprived anymore. He took me to posh places in Peckham, and we had I had a vegan burger, but back in the day, that wasn't there. Trust me. So where do you think, Kenny? Yes, and then when I say to people, "Oh, he's got a brother who's just the same," they're like, two of them in the same family. I said, yeah. So where do you think that grounding, that ultimate grounding, came from?
That's a brilliant question. For me, to be honest, I think a lot of that grounding is just very much in faith anyway. And similar to a point George made earlier, I feel that's where the whole sense of humility and just that whole, like, look, we're extremely blessed and favored and very fortunate, right? And that we'll both be delusional to believe that everything we have is just the fruit of us just working hard. For me, it's also a blessing to have met even these mentors that we are talking about, right? Because how much people want mentors and they never get the right ones. And so even for me, even to have the discernment, right, around who your mentors are going to be is actually very important, because it's a very intimate relationship, to be very honest, in terms of, if I'm willing to trust you to the extent that you say something and I trust you enough to even override my own decision making to go with what you've told me, that takes a lot of vulnerability and trust. And so for me, I'll definitely say a lot of where we are today is very much grounded in just faith. And I don't think there's any other answer. I feel like anything else I would say is like coming up with this strategy and that. And I feel like a lot of faith has shaped us to be way more kind, way more generous, way more forgiving as people. And also just also understanding from a perspective of faith, like prosperity, even though people don't like the word because they think of prosperity gospel, whatever. Actually, like, I do think it's something which is promised to us all, right? And when I say prosperity, I mean in terms of every aspect of your life. I mean, you having more than enough. And I feel as time has gone on, we are seeing way more fruits of that labor. But at the same time, I'm so super conscious that I never got here by myself anyway. It's very different for me. It's not like I need to even be reminded. I know this, right? It says a lot of people have played a part to seeing the two men you're seeing today. It's not just, and that's why, even like to reiterate what I said earlier, that's why the mentoring is so key. And yeah, just really attaching yourself to people who are much smarter, much wiser, and not just because of what you can gain, but also because after what you've gained, you're also going to give it back to what like the whole title of this podcast is, right? Is send the ladder back down. You can do that whilst you're at the journey. I didn't need to wait until I got to level 40 if I start sending back down. As soon as I got to the next level, I was doing it. At each level, I've been doing it. And I mean, that's also the danger of mentoring. A lot of people actually don't want to mentor because they're waiting to arrive, and you ain't gonna arrive nowhere. You'll never arrive. Like, you're meant to die empty. You're meant to. I'm excited about seeing how far I can take this. Not here thinking, it's that for me. That's when you get too comfortable. And for me, there's nothing to be comfortable about, because there's too much issues out there for us to solve, even as a community. And there's people who are dying for the help, who just don't have it. So like I said, even that itself is a blessing. There are enough men and women out there who would love to have mentors who are teachable, who are humble, who would take this stuff and run with it, but they never get the access. And they do try and do things on their own will and be proactive, but things are still not happening. So for me, it's just that favor there. We can only be grateful that that's been the case. And I'm sure George would agree anyway, in terms of what I've said.
Anything I say will be diluting what Kenny's just said. Like, that's complete, full, every aspect. So I probably can't add much more to that at all. Yeah.
But was faith always at the forefront of you guys' lives? Because I know that I was born in church. Their white van come every Sunday, and if my grandmother said you better get in the van. Yeah, honestly, it's so funny. You used to hear the van before you used to see it. I was brought up in the church, and then it's not that I left the church, but then you think you've arrived, don't you? And you start living a worldly life and going back to business. But I came back to church in my late 20s, I would say. So for me, I would say church, not even church, because I have some issues with certain churches, trust me. So from a faith, I just have a very personal relationship with God. And like you guys, I'm always very thankful. When I say to people, boy, I woke up today, and they think, yeah, okay. But for me, that's major, because plenty of people did wake up today. Do you know what I mean? And I think people need to sometimes be a bit humbled by that. So George, for you, faith?
Yeah, so for me, yeah, very similar to Kenny. It wasn't probably until ages of 14, 15, I had experienced a lot. So the benefit that I had was I'm 4 years younger than Kenny. I believe it's 4 years, right? Yeah, 4 years younger than Kenny. So what that meant was I had exposure to a lot of things very early, and I could see, Kenny's faith journey. I could see different people and learn, pick the best parts and the parts that I didn't like, kind of just throw them away. So almost be a refined version. And he always wanted the best for me, so I could kind of go on that journey. So when it comes to faith in particular, when I was around 14, 15, I learned from that point so many things could have been avoided. So I was just looking for a way out. And I thought, let me just try this church thing. Let me just try this faith thing and see where it is. And I think one Sunday when I went to church, just one, Sunday morning in 2014, I believe, I was just convicted to not be lukewarm. So I thought, let me give, my full attention to this and see how it works. And similar to you, just focusing on a personal relationship. Initially, it started off very, much like religion, so trying to do everything to please God and work towards His favor. Then I learned about grace. It took me so long to learn about grace, but as soon as I learned that, I realized, I don't have to work for this. It's already been paid for. So I think it came early for me, and what it did was shape my value system. And as soon as it shaped my value system, I could start learning, okay, the importance of giving back. Wham, and that came from things such as tithing and so forth, or just volunteering with the church and small things like this. I realized that, hey, there was an institution here to make sure that people in the world were being catered for, and I think all of these small things shaped the way I work, shaped the way I do things in general. So yeah, I would say that's what it did. It shaped my value system from very early because of the experiences that I saw that I didn't want to have for myself. And I saw faith as a way out to do that. And yeah, ever since I've kind of flourished with that.
You haven't looked back?
I haven't looked back whatsoever.
So if I was to ask you that question, what would you have said to your 10-year-old self? What would that be for you, Kenny?
Yeah, so for me, that's easy. Just the importance of just understanding that we overestimate what we can do in a year or two, but underestimate what we can do in 10. And just really learning the importance of patience and your own. See, when it's your time, it's your time.
I would think what is for you is for you. There's a plan for us all. You, George?
For me, I would say, I think that's a great one. I would say get as much exposure as you can to the things that you care about. I started fixing bikes from the age of 8 or whatever it may have been. And little did I know that would lead to engineering now, and being, on the board of Lewis Hamilton. How would I ever have known that everything would come?
You see what I mean, everybody? The board of Lewis Hamilton. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, go on, George. Continue.
So no one ever could have written that, and I think that in and of itself is a miracle. However, I see the fruits, as Kenny said, it links to Kenny's statement 10 years ago. The work started a long time, and I would never have thought that this is possible now. So I would say getting as much exposure as you can early with different industries, and different, experiences, pestering my school and everything, possible to make sure I was exposed to everything out there.
The Eulogy podcast continues after the break. This podcast is brought to you by the Naked Truth Agency. We don't try to make your presence noticed. We make your absence felt. PR, talent, production. www.nakedtruth.agency.
Welcome back to the second part of the Eulogy podcast. Well, before going to the break, it's really interesting to get some of your views on sort of where you come from, your views on mentoring, because I just find in this day and age, everybody wants to be famous. I mean, I love and I hate social media. And I always find it interesting what types of people look up to, their role models. So where are you guys now in your lives? I'm very big on social mobility, seeing people having access and exposure to certain things. Where would you guys say you are now, and what is it that you guys want to do to send the lift back down? George.
So for me, as soon as my value system and so forth has been shaped, I've always been very keen on and big on building communities. So over the last 6 years, working across engineering, technology, consulting, finance, with firms such as like Google, Rolls-Royce, JP Morgan, all the amazing organizations. Every
You
single thing I
see?
did,
Gee,
every single thing I did was focused on how can I use this experience to either, get an opportunity for someone else, build my professional literacy or whatever it may have been in finance so that I can run a better business and organization or charity and make sure that those operations, so every single thing has been focused on having almost what I call servant leadership. Everything has been focused on that. So over the last kind of 6 years, I did that. And then in 2015, I set up with my co-founder Louise, the organization called Motives. We created this app to provide young people with personalized opportunities to explore their interests and careers, particularly underrepresented young people. So this aspect of social mobility is close to my heart. And I wanted to understand how can we do it at a grassroots level, but also at scale with technology. And that's how it all started. We wanted to impact as many people as we could, and not just people in Peckham, because for me, that wasn't enough, because I knew this amazing people that can help, but how can we do this on a bigger scale? So for me, I very much want to continue doing that work. So I'm full-time on that now since I've graduated in 2020, the COVID generation of graduates. And I'm excited to support people now because they need it now even more than...
I know. When you listen to the amount of people out of work, graduates not even getting internships, even unpaid internships, let alone paid.
Exactly.
It's scary.
Exactly. And youth unemployment has gone through the roof. The funding cuts, the cuts are continuing. There's like, how do we address these issues and help people, get careers, especially the underrepresented groups, like myself. So I'm very much focused on doing that and continuing to run programs and seeing how we can use technology to shape that future. It's kind of what I'm focused on for the next 3 years or so.
Okay. Kenny, the big man, come on, tell us.
Too funny. No. So for me, I would say it's just a lot of like what I'm doing now is obviously I'm trying to serve as much people as possible. So there's a lot of people who I mentor, don't really keep a cap, just whoever I can be a resource for in terms of helping them to level up and get to the next level. I'm there to support them, and mainly just because I know exactly how it feels when you get that belief from someone else that you may not even have in yourself and what that can do for you in terms of giving you confidence on your journey. So I really try to be that person for everyone, like the cornerstone person that really backed them from early. So I love to back a lot of people who I see that potential in, who may not even see themselves. So I feel like that's just been growing and anything else. And obviously one of the communities I do that with is obviously with the CB community, which obviously George knows about. There's like 100 of us, all young Black and professional people doing amazing
Come on,
things.
tell us some more. What is that? Me can't
no,
join because me not young, but me Black. Yes, can I
yeah,
join?
that's no. It's not.
No,
You just missed
everybody,
it. 36.
let me tell you. You see,
36.
you just missed it. Thanks.
Just missed it. Yeah. So people are 80 to 35, and so we've just been growing that. But then outside of that, obviously, I'm very passionate about governance and ensuring that way more people, particularly from our community and underrepresented backgrounds and non-traditional backgrounds as well, are represented on boards and actually the decision makers as well. So as you know, I've been sitting on boards since I was 19. I'm 27 now, and obviously this year we also launched our program called On Board, which I co-founded with Elizabeth Moore. And that will help to train a cohort of up to 12 people from non-traditional and underrepresented backgrounds to actually help them to become effective decision makers. So not just to get onto a board, but also when they get there to ensure that they are also effective. Because and so that's one of the things we're doing at the moment. And yeah, as you know, so sitting on the board of BBC Children in Need and being able to work strategically and look at how we can influence the millions of pounds we spend each year across a portfolio of 3,000 charities and more. And so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of roles and opportunities I have where I can serve. Obviously, the work that I do with Lord Hastings in relation to My Brother's Keeper, which we founded, which is working with men mainly who are lifers in prison and it's helping them to also to level up and grow themselves, right? And ensure that they understand that the change starts from within where they are right now, not necessarily when they leave. And George has come to one of the main prisons where we're working, which is a high security prison. And we've been doing that for over 4 years, just us two every 2 months. And every now and then we bring in our brothers. And sometimes we bring in even very senior people to also come and experience and deliver, who then go off to then deliver training to the men there. And the prison work is something which is definitely, like, I would say, a priority for us. That's why we've kept on doing it over 4.5 years. It's almost come to 5 years. And all these things I'm talking about, they're not paid. It's just things that I just believe that we should be doing. and even with that, hopefully we get to scale that. My Brother's Keeper. Obviously, George is also one of the mentors as well. So yeah, I feel like there's just so much going on. And I think, actually, I know that for me, it's just all the stuff I'm talking to you about that I'm doing in terms of volunteering or free or serving is just as important, or even more important than the stuff I do around making money and business. Like, we're making money and focus on sustainability so I can do all these other things. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I don't know if you guys have watched it. I think Kenny said to you, I asked you if you'd watched it, The Black Godfather. And what I loved about that, so definitely George, watch it. I know I've told Kenny to watch it. I know it's on his list. And
now I'm gonna watch it, The Black Godfather.
No, but what
high on my list.
I'm telling you, all what we're talking about now, when you watch the Black Godfather, I don't know how to explain. When I watched it, I had to take a moment, because this is where we as a people often go wrong. They're not supporting one another. Like, when one of us gets up there, we get nervous, like, oh my God, there can't be another one. You know, where does that put me in this place of work or whatever? But this guy, when I say poverty, not educated, but became one of the most powerful, and still is, people in the entertainment world and up there in Hollywood. And a lot of the people we know of, he's helped. He didn't want anything. He just wanted to make sure they got what they deserved, and put them in rooms and in positions and negotiated contracts that would never have happened. And it just makes you really reflective to say, wow, because it was it's really touching. I asked him, who fills those kinds of shoes when you just do things from your heart, from your community, because you want them to go on to do well. But there's very few people like that, unfortunately. And I think even podcasts like this is education in itself. A lot of people think when they get to a certain level, they do less in respect to their communities, unfortunately. I just think there needs to be more Black people like you guys to really carry that mantle forward. Because I always say, I need to have somebody to pass that baton on to, because I'm not going to be here forever. That's the reality. Chapter and death is the reality. And I think it's important to start having that pipeline from now, because you just don't know what could happen. And I always say, that's to me one of the biggest gifts, being able to even have those conversations with somebody, and that you're listened to, and hopefully by your own experiences and things that have gone negatively that you've learned from, you can pass that wisdom on to somebody else, and they skip that. They don't need to go through that kind of black hole that I may have gone through. You know, I think is really, really important. So ultimately, the reason why the podcast is called The Eulogy was really about my mum, who quietly did a lot of work in the community. And she went far too soon, in my opinion, and that's selfishly. But I also believe that she served her purpose. She quietly went for it and probably didn't realize the impact she had on so many people. So when her funeral had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, it always makes me realize that's legacy. That is what legacy is about. Because like Kenny said, they didn't talk about the car she drove or the house she lived in. They talked about the impact she had on their lives. If you could write your own eulogy, George, or you could say what legacy you would like to leave, what would that be?
It's a great question, and I think this is when it all started. This is when I started to get purpose driven. I still remember the day I was at a conference in 2014, and I wrote a eulogy, or I attempted, because it's the first time I heard the word. So I was like, okay, cool, let me try this thing.
I actually didn't we do? You should have done that for CB. Didn't we do it?
No, so I did it in 2014. So before then, I already started. So I did it, and I said my mission is to be a humanitarian engineer, and it's really in the two words, combining this element of people first. So everything I design and build as an engineer is going to be for people. So there's still people until this very day that don't have basic access to toilets, don't have basic access to water. And that's often on the continent of Africa or many other continents as well. And for all of these issues, I've always been passionate, not necessarily about creating a foundation or so. I don't know how it will materialize, but being at the forefront of making that change, those just the basic needs that people have, and improving their quality of life. And that's been a mission that I've had from the very beginning. So it starts now with motives and helping people get employment and jobs and upskilling them. But as it goes on, I'm really like convicted. As soon as I watched Wakanda and everything happening and like seeing what that looks like, you know what I mean? Literally seeing what that looks like from the Black Panther, I really thought, as an engineer, that excited me. Like I could be involved in creating a legacy on the continent, but starting here in the diaspora to really build up that skill set and understand what is needed to kind of do business with the people in the West, but ultimately seeing what work can be done back then. Because until then, I don't think I'm ever going to be proud of, you know, what we could have done as a people. So if I can make a dent there as a humanitarian engineer, I think that would be a legacy that I would love to leave. Yeah.
I love humanity engineer. People, you listening? Humanity engineer. You heard it here first. Because when you see George in the next few years being his humanity engineer, don't say I didn't tell you. Him tell you. That's right. Come on now, Kenny. What is yours?
I definitely don't have a humanitarian engineer.
Sorry, George has got that one.
George definitely taken that one. It's interesting you ask this question, something which I've obviously thought about. It's because obviously when you think about eulogies, obviously, as you know, like when people pass away, you see the obituaries, which a lot of times is in the newspaper. People pay attention, and so it has also inspired me to particularly think about death in that way, in terms of when the time does come, and they actually read about you and they share. I mean, the statement about what you want to be there, and for me, it's always been around actually. First and foremost, it being very clear that actually, he was humble and lived a life of service to others and supported those who were less fortunate and also written off by society. Everything else after that is very much is what is. And people can say those stuff, but it's really centered around that for me, to be honest. Even when I think about my own purpose, is about people who are hopeless, people who are in unfortunate circumstances of no doing of their own, and people are written off. And I feel like actually I've been in one of those three in my life anyway. at any particular point, at some particular point. Obviously, I'm not there now. And if I can afford and help to be the solution for others, then brilliant. There's no point, right? Because obviously, and as you know, right, you can have all the money, all the material stuff that people believe makes you happy. And obviously it can increase happiness, but only even up to a certain point, right? And so for me, the real place I get it's interesting, right? In terms of where it's what the Bible talks about, in terms of like it's about where you keep your treasure, right? And for me, it's if I'm thinking about when my time has done, and I say me believing that heaven is real, that's exactly where I want to begin. And in terms of, because like I just served in it, I just done exactly what I needed to do. And I think a lot of times people kind of overlook that because it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, and people just do it because a lot of times to not have a guilty conscience. Whereas for me, actually, like I really enjoy it. I get fulfillment, and also that's what helps me to really grow. And it's that whole thing of like, if service is above you, then you know what I mean, then leadership is beneath you. And when you take that mindset, what George talked about in terms of servant leadership, that really does change things for you. And like I said before, business and all those things I do, which I do enjoy, that is great, but that has to enable me to do all the other stuff I want to do. And I think that's why I've been able to go so far, right? Because all these things I can do for free. I don't have to get money to do it. I can actually just do it.
And it just feels good, doesn't it? I always say to people,
it's amazing.
It feels amazing. If anything, very selfish because of how it feels. But I guess
honestly,
everyone is different.
Amazing. It's just a good feeling. And when I look at what's going out with COVID now, I've said to people at this time, I've seen the worst in people, and I have seen some of the best in people. I mean, even for me, when I was not 100%, my neighbours came and brought me some lovely jollof rice. Hi, it was lovely. But what I'm saying is they cooked it, they just put it on the doorstep.
Nigerian jollof rice.
It was actually. It wasn't Ghanaian.
That was Ghanaian jollof rice. You can
listen, we love both, but anyway, it was Nigerian. But what I'm saying is, they just left it on the thing and just messaged me. And you know, when someone doesn't have to do that, they don't have to do that. So I've seen some really, real nice acts of kindness. If you had, Kenny, a special power, what would your special power be and why?
My special power would be to teleport. I think teleportation is just the best. You can just be wherever you need to be. That's it.
What would yours be, George?
It's really that simple to answer.
It's a hard one. It is hard. Kenny, you had more that you wanted to say. Expand.
Teleport. He just likes to travel.
For me, I think that's what it is. I think I just like to travel. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you like to. Yeah, new cultures, isn't it? It's nice I think. But what would yours be, George?
For me, I think like an inventor. And so generally,
that is not a special power.
No. I said I think like an inventor. I never said that's what the special power would be.
You see, this is when you get. You said, "I love it, innit, brothers." Yeah. Come on, it's all coming out now.
Yeah. So I would say very, very similar to the Black Panther sister. To be honest, I don't know if we class that as superpowers, but it definitely felt like it. So that's Layla. Just being able to just create things out of nothing, essentially. I think that's just literally what it is. I just think that's phenomenal.
No, that's good. That's actually wavy. That's a good one still. To be able to have the mind to do that.
Yeah,
but at least I'll just teleport. Yeah. I could create. The slang don't suit you.
Just wavy. You know what? It's been such a pleasure speaking to you both. You know, it's funny enough, I was looking at some pictures when we all went out for lunch, us three. And when I looked at the year, it was like quite a number of years ago. I couldn't believe it.
2012. Was it 2012?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And I just think to see how much you guys have grown it's just beautiful. And that I always say this about you guys, it's your humility. I just think humility is such a big, big thing. And like I said, that you're both teachable. And I do think that will, wherever you want to go, whatever journey you guys are going to go on, you're going to get there. Because, you know, that word, I hate that self-made, you know, self-made millionaires. And as I always say, it's not, you're collectively made, because there's so many parts that make us who we are. People, the experiences, the lessons learned, our mentors, our, you know, whatever. And I always say I'm collectively made, because it took many different people experiences to bring me to the place I am today. And I feel really honored to say that I think you guys are definitely stamped collectively made in Peckham. I always give Kenny a hard time about give Kenny a hard time about Peckham, because I'll be honest. You see, and this is where it talks about different experiences. As you two both know, I'm not from London originally. And I remember one time me and a girlfriend came from our, you know, leafy area outside of 3 counties outside of London, and came to we met some 2 boys from New Cross, and we got on the train. I remember coming on the train, never forget it. And as I got nearer to New Cross, there was graffiti. I wasn't really exposed to those things. And it's so quick when you're not exposed to judge, to come up with some sort of judgment. And that's one of the things that I've learned on my journey, that it doesn't matter where you come from. Most of us just want to be loved. We want to have some sort of success. But I just remember that ultimately these people are people who just trying to find their way in this big bad world of ours. And so I always tease Kenny about Peckham, but I'm telling you, so many amazing people who I know have come out of Peckham. The reason why I think that as well is also sometimes when you have that as an example to say, like I'd say, I grew up in an estate. I never want to go back there. I might say I might go and visit, but I never want to be back in that place. So I'm always trying to do better so that I can help anybody else to come out of that situation, because it wasn't, you know, great growing up on an estate. Let's be honest, it wasn't great, but it's nice to go back. And that sometimes people say, what keeps you going? You just think, I don't want to go back there. I don't. I want to be in a position where I can take my hand and pull other people up, and to expose them to different things and different possibilities, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah. You know, and if you're not exposed to it, you just don't know. On that note, my darling Kenny and George, I want to say thank you for being a part of this episode, which was important to me because I live by passing the baton on. I live by sending the lift back down, because I know so many people get to the top and put the emergency button on. All I can say is I will hopefully, God willing, be there along you guys' journey to see how you guys really shine, or even shine brighter, I should say, because you shine already, shine brighter. I always say this story about the guy who invented the atomic bomb. And when I say to the people that he was the same person who did the Nobel Peace Prize, and I said, the reason why I think when you need to think about your eulogy is because when, you know, fake news, people thought he died, and he read what people actually wrote about him. He, which is not what most of us will get that opportunity, was able to change what his eulogy ended up being. That's why I think it's important to really decide what that's going to be now and work towards it. Because I always say, you know, after you've gone, it's great. Oh yeah, he's great, you know, really fantastic and all that. That's good. But also in your life, you want to be known and recognized for the good things that we do. And not just wait till, because, you know, we always say you celebrate. Oh, you say, oh God, you say all that now they're dead, you know, but what about while they're alive also? And I think if we think about it in that way, we work towards the legacy that we want to leave behind, I think is really important. So thank you. And I'm sure I'll have you at another time on again to talk about something just as interesting, like relationships, you know, because I'm always teasing you guys. Yeah.
Another time still, not right now.
Yeah, you see. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and until next time, as I all say to you all, that's my legacy, what's yours? Until next time, join me on the Eulogy podcast.
Well, that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed it, and remember, you are the author of your own legacy. Make it a good one.
The Eulogy podcast is presented and produced by Naked Truth Production. Executive producer, Diane Riney. Editorial assistants, Laura Hunt and Daniela Mason. Producer, Emily Farrell. Digital marketing, Lauren Colburn and Emily Farrell. Theme music, written and produced by Gary Grant. Special thanks to Nicole Alsey, Ahaji Kamara, Kevin Williams, Evadne Campbell, Vinter Morgan. In memory of Caroline Riney, sunrise 30/06/1952, sunset 24/01/2010. Thank you for listening to the Eulogy podcast by Diane Riney.